All right, so we did another trip, or we did a trip out to BC, mainly to Kootenay Lake, but along the way, of course, we had to stop at a few bookstores, have a look, and see what some of the secondhand shops had for some Canadian illustration, or just any kind of comic in general that you could fish out of those places. But some thrifts, definitely buying books used at a few of the shops out along that way, but also too stopping at some awesome bookstores out in Cranbrook and in Caslow. So stopped at Page's Book Emporium in Cranbrook, which was fantastic. A good mix of like new comics, old comics. They had used books, they had new books, awesome magazine stand, and lots of I think they even had board games there. It was a cool shop. I would probably spend a lot of time in there. And I walked out with some secondhand Canadian illustration books from there. My kid got some Flash comics, and then we walked down the street to Huckleberry Books, which had a very charming cat there. I'll put the link in the description for these shops as well. But Huckleberry Books was awesome. I bought new books there. A lot of books that I don't see in a lot of places, which was really awesome. And then Arrhythmy Studio and Bookstore in Caslow, which was a small shop in a really old building, beautiful building. And again, I'll leave some links to some of these places in the descriptions. But yeah, one of the ones that I got from Page's Book Emporium in Cranbrook was Children of the Atom, the Dave Lapp collection of his strips. And from my understanding, this is a book that consolidates a lot of his syndicated stuff. Or not syndicated, I don't think it's syndicated, but stuff that was running in a newspaper of some kind. So this was published in 2010 by Dave Lapp from Conundrum. Conundrum, of course, published his awesome book Drop In, which I'm a big fan of. This looks quite a bit different from his art in Drop In, so looking forward to going through that one. Picked up some Ben Wicks' Canada. I've been reading more and more about Ben Wicks and trying to discover and appreciate this man. Which, reading this book, we did have a read through when we were out on vacation, and really, like, this dude is, I guess, trying to position himself as maybe like this British Cockney dandy almost, and trying to make some observations on Canadian life, especially based on his experiences being in Calgary, where he lived and I believe died here in Calgary in the year 2000. But for a book that was published in like, mid 70s, it's not going to be politically correct to 2022. Yeah, there were some things in here that were particularly insulting or particularly sexist, very sexist, I would say, and certainly not humorous. But yeah, definitely of its time. So when I get a chance to, I would like to do just one video dedicated to Ben Wicks. I'm going to try to pick up some of his nonfiction books that he put together, that he was kind of the editor for. He edited collections of stories of people who lived through like the London Blitz and things like that. So I'm going to try to get some of that stuff before I do a run through of Ben Wicks' work, which I am learning to appreciate. His definitely his cartooning, simplistic, very good, really quick but poignant, I would say. All right. So one of the books that this kitty cat at Huckleberry Books convinced me to get was Jessica Campbell's RAVE. Of course, it didn't take too much convincing because Jessica Campbell, I had reviewed one of her books before, The Hot or Not, which was fantastic. Really fun little book that she put together. This book is awesome, and really, I read it already. Deals with some religion, deals with like sexual orientation. I don't know if in the bookstore it was LGBTQ lit, but I would suggest maybe more feminist lit. But nevertheless, awesome stuff, and really, really a punchy way of telling this fascinating story about a very Christian young girl who has a bit of a lesbian relationship with another girl in her town who goes missing, which is really close to kind of my own project. But awesome stuff, Jessica Campbell. Nice book, totally nice book from Drawn and Quarterly, of course, who published Hot or Not as well. I don't know much about this, but I did go through it. The funniest book in Newfoundland. Awesome illustrations in it by a gentleman named James T. Standish, who I get the impression was he prides himself as not being educated or literate, but his jokes are pretty great. A lot of dad jokes, pretty harmless dad jokes throughout here. Heavy brush. The guy's not educated. Keeps reminding you of that as he's unfolding this. But cool characters in here. There was one character, one and only Willie. I don't know if people out in Newfoundland are familiar with Willie, if he appeared in any of the newspapers out there. But yeah, this Standish is, I think, a barkeep somewhere in Newfoundland. Newfoundland is very far away from BC, but we tend to get a lot of Newfoundlanders out west, just because of the oil and gas situation out here. A lot of staff, a lot of those companies are staffed by Newfoundlanders. But since the economy has changed, I think a lot of Newfoundlanders over the past 15 years or so have returned back home, just with more opportunities opening up there with the offshore oil and gas that is produced that way. The funniest book in Newfoundland. I don't know. I've never been to Newfoundland. I can't say. Petra Hekkenberg. I picked this one up. This was one of the new books that was on display at that bookstore, Eurythmy Studio and Bookstore in Caslow. Didn't take much convincing for me to purchase this. And it kind of goes hand in hand with another book that I got in Cranbrook, this For a Lark. I think I will do a video at some point just highlighting some of the nature illustration, the specifically nature illustration in my collection. I really like the sort of nature pamphlet kind of thing, not comic books, obviously, but definitely dipping its toes very close into that style of illustration. Not political cartooning, but something unique and all its own. Petra's stuff is very inviting. This is a very beautiful book. It does have a slick embossed cover. Very nice. I love books that are tactile, right? And so Petra was employed by the KOKANEE. Is it the KOKANEE Park or Kootenai Park? Oh, look, she even signed it. Thanks, Petra. She wasn't there, obviously, when I bought the book, but a really nice book. Convinced us, as I was reading through it, convinced us to visit a few off the beaten path lakes to go do some canoeing. But her illustration is just fantastic. And her commentary that she gives you on a lot of the park was, highly educational. And like I said, inspired us to get out to specific lakes that she cited in her book. So thanks for that, Petra. And another nature illustration book that I got, not a new one, but looks new, looks contemporary. This could have been published by, I don't know, like Drawn and Quarterly or somebody. Just, it's a beautiful little book. So John Huberman and Sylvia Tate. So it's Sylvia Tate's illustrations throughout this book. And John Huberman's I guess his poetry, his little quips that he has about different birds that you're gonna see in Canada out in these parts. Petra's illustrations are pretty fun, going anywhere from like really conventional representation, really simple one-line kind of illustrations, and then I love this page of birds that she drew. Kind of harkening back, I guess, to like a Ralph Steadman kind of look, which I don't know if Ralph Steadman's work was like super, super popular in the 70s. But yeah, again, like you would never guess that this is a book that came from the 1970s. Looks like something that could have come out more recently. Yeah, look. Again, something to fit into my nature illustration collection. All right. DAKWAKADA Warriors by Cole Pauls. I've read previews of this before, and I was like, oh, I'm probably never going to be able to find this book except for from the publisher, but did see it at the store, again from Huckleberry Books in Cranbrook. Yeah, really cool stuff. I don't want to say too much about it because, like, I'm not as familiar with the nation that that Cole Pauls comes from. I wanted to say that this was all one type of art that he's kind of melding with that outlaw comics look, but taking some characters from the mythology of his people is the impression that I get. And crafting them into a superhero science fiction kind of story, using it as an allegory for colonization, and settlers, I believe, are the enemy in here. As somebody who's descended from settlers, this should be a good read. Should be fun, insightful. I really like the preview that I had read before, so I'm gonna dive into that. Published from Conundrum. So there's Michael, Nicoll, Yahgulanaas. I doubt that I am pronouncing that properly. I've already got one book in my collection, his first book, Red, in my collection, which he describes these as like Haida manga. So Haida is like a particular, I guess you could say nation. I don't want to say tribe, but a nation in BC, very much associated with like the coastal groups of indigenous people. Associated with coastal groups of indigenous people, particularly Haida, I believe is more like northern Pacific coast in British Columbia, in the land that's referred to as British Columbia. Yeah, Red was awesome. And I don't know if this is a new one. I suspect it is. I haven't heard of this one before. Anyways, War of the Blink. Check that out. Another book that I found at Huckleberry Books was this Enemy Alien. True story of life behind barbed wire. Which I assumed was going to be about like Japanese internment in Canada, but is actually about Ukrainians in Canada. So that should be a pretty interesting read. I'm looking forward to that. I do want to mention the publisher. She's BTL Books. Between the Lines in Toronto. Between the Lines being a pretty interesting, I think they're a newer publisher as far as I know. But on this trip, actually, I took their book called 1919, about the strike that happened. It was, I believe, a miners' strike that happened in Winnipeg, in the Winnipeg General Strike of 1919. I'm totally butchering my description of this book, but it was a well done book, and definitely prompted me to purchase this one another release from BTL. I think similar to High Water, trying to publish some voices maybe that aren't necessarily often heard in Canada, by Cassandra, Luciuk, and illustrated by Nicole Marie Burton. I'll try to find their websites and things like that and link to those in the description. This book I bought off the street. There was like a little festival going on in Caslow when we were there, and somebody had a little sort of bric-a-brac set up there, and then they had this homage to Leonard Cohen by Elizabeth Laisley. Yeah, so I read this because I am definitely a mark for some Leonard Cohen. Love Leonard Cohen's work, and the idea that it's not illustration, it's all paintings, but it was a neat concept. Like, she'd put together this series of paintings, each one based on a song by Leonard Cohen. But I actually found her story to be quite interesting. It's almost like this homage to Leonard Cohen as a vehicle to learn about the artist Elizabeth Laisley, who I would say has lived quite a life. And this book takes you through some of the experiences that she had coming from France and living in Alberta, and the struggles that she had to kind of find her artistic voice. And certainly glad she found it, because she's been successful with these paintings, and I get the impression with a few other series of works as well. So yeah, really a neat little book. I was really happy to find it. I recognize there is the graphic novel floating around out there, recently released by Leonard Cohen. So I will be picking that up at some point. I see it everywhere. I see it at Chapters and stuff, so I'm not worried about missing out on it. Yeah, we'll pick that one up as well. But this kind of being maybe my entry into that, to pique my interest into that. I didn't even listen to any Leonard Cohen on this trip, but after reading this book, all of his songs were stuck in my head. So I think that's a credit to Elizabeth Laisley's art and taking me there, and how those experiences that she had in her life coincided with the different songs by Leonard Cohen, which I could definitely relate to and living in rural Alberta. So that's going to be special. SKOOKUM'S North, I don't know much about this. I just had a quick look at it. This is a collection of strips from the 1980s and 1990s by the artist, who is Doug Urquhart. So just what I read is it's kind of the challenges of having a team of dogs, the Paws collection, team of dogs, and running teams of dogs, which upon the invention of the snowmobile and sort of the popularization of the snowmobile, really kind of pushed this driving dogs underground, turned it into a hobby almost overnight, because it was something that people depended on in northern Canada for a very long time. Then once snowmobiles came along, dog teams were not as important anymore, and it's since become something that's more of a hobby thing, or maybe a tradition that is being appreciated once again. But yeah, if you're a tourist, you can totally take dog teams out and pay top dollar for the privilege of doing that. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in this topic. I just started learning a bit about driving dogs. I've never driven dogs before, but yeah, learning about this, kind of appreciating this piece of northern culture and northern life in Canada. And this might be a good education just by way of strips. So yeah, Skookum. I kind of figured this guy was maybe from Skookumchuck, which is just north of where we were on Kootenay Lake, but I'm sure there's more to it than that. And maybe Skookum is part of a particular language of BC. with our Indigenous peoples. So McPherson's editorial cartoons from 1977. I've got one of McPherson's collections already. McPherson to me is one of the best, and certainly as I've been learning about Canadian political cartooning, McPherson is kind of hailed as the Canadian political cartoonist, which, yeah, just the way he switches styles, can't disagree with at all. This guy's a master. But yeah, eager to add this to my collection of McPherson illustration. I have been collecting kind of off and on the Norris annuals. So Norris from Vancouver Sun. That's blocked out. Somebody put a sticker over that. I'll have to check that out. So again, 1976. Hey, nice. It was a gift to somebody in 1976, a Christmas gift, before I was even born to somebody. So yeah, just adding these two, the 14th annual collection and the 25th annual collection to my collection. I see these all the time. They're everywhere. And it seems the deeper you get into BC, you're going to find more of these. And the last one that I picked up is Gord Hill's newest book. I believe it's his newest one. 500 Years of Indigenous Resistance. It's even got some of the stuff from Wet'suwet'en in it. This is the revised and expanded version. I've got a few of Gord Hill's books. Recently watched an interview with Gord Hill. Gord Hill really is a prize of Canadian illustration and Canadian voices. Yeah, I think he gets maybe derided because of his political leanings. Because of his involvement with anti-fascism. I'm sorry, but I consider that a good thing. And consider that pretty awesome. And for Gord Hill to find his cartooning voice that way, through more unconventional routes, and kind of his comic book work, his graphic work, being secondary to his anti-fascist work. Yeah, Gord Hill, you're the man. You're the man. You're totally the man. And eager to maybe run into you at a comic convention someday. So that is my haul from this trip. As you can see, it's hard to resist anything when I see it come up. So I'm just going to ask you to like, subscribe, check me out on Insta for my own stuff. Yeah, and hopefully I can accumulate more Gord Hill books so I can do just a specific Gord Hill video for you. But thanks again for watching, and take care, folks.